Okay, good morning and welcome, Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. We're doing Kesubos Sadi Hey, number 95. We'll be concluding the 10th parak today. It's pretty exciting. 10 prakim, Kesubos. Only another about 20 daf, a little less than 20 daf to do. Let's get started. The Mishnah on Sadi Hey Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Mishaya Nosri Shtei Nashim. We talked about he was going up in life. One Mishnah says he's married to 2 wives, then 3 wives, then 4 wives. And then, his son realized that 4 wives were too much for his father to handle, so he went back to 2 wives. He was married to 2 wives. Umakar Esadeu. He sold his field. V'kasar Rishon l'Lokeach. Right. So now both women have a lien on all his properties. Right. Part of the Kesubos that the Kesubos have a lien on all his properties. He sold the field to one person. The first woman, the first wife, she wrote to the buyer, she relinquished her rights to collect from the field from that guy. So when the time comes to collect the Kesubos, the husband died. Second wife, she comes to the land. The first wife can't collect from the buyer if that's the only property that's available to collect the Kesuba, but the Shniya can't. However, once the second wife collects, the Rishona says she can't collect from the buyer, but she can collect from the second wife. And then once she collects, the first wife collects from the second wife, so then the buyer can collect from the first wife because the first wife relinquished her rights to the field vis-a-vis the buyer. The Chosros Chalila, they can just go in circles. Ajiyasu Pshara, they have to figure out themselves to make a deal, a compromise themselves, maybe split the field in 3 ways. Same thing applies to creditors of a loan, and same thing applies to a woman who is a creditor. We'll talk more at the end of the Mishnah, at the end of the Gemara. The Gemara says, my happy, what does it help if the first wife writes to the buyer, Dinu Dvarim, I have no rights to the field, Vatanya. The Bible says, Omer l'chavero, Dinu Dvarim, ainli al sadazu. He says to his friend, I have no rights to this field, Ainli Asek ba, V'yadai Misuleka Siman, he writes, I have no dealings with it, or my hands removed from it. Lo Amar Klum, it's ineffective, his words. So the Gemara is Hakamay our Mishnah is talking about Bashkana Miyada. They actually did a Kenya Chalipa. When she said Dinu Dvarim, right, she actually did a Kenya Chalipa, which is the physical transfer of ownership that she relinquished her rights to this field. Bashkana Miyada, my happy. The Gemara says, even if she did a Kenyan, maybe her words were meaningless. Tema Nachas Rochas Yisrael Bayali. We're going to see in the coming Mishnayos that a woman can say, the only reason I signed off on this deal or said something is that I wanted to do my husband's will, but really I didn't mean it. Milos, not didn't we learn in Mishnah and Gittin, Lakach min ha'ish, V'chazar Lakach min ha'isha. Right? A husband and a wife jointly own a field, right? We talked about Nichse Malug, the woman brings in. It's owned, right? Abayi says Yado ki Yada, Rav says Yado Adiva mi Yada, but they both own it, technically the Nichse Malug field. So yeah, someone buys the field from the husband, you have to buy it from both people, and then he bought it from the woman. Mechel batel, we assume, if the woman makes a taina, we'll see, that the deal is invalid. As long as she comes forward and says, the only reason I signed up for the deal, I wanted to please my husband. I'm an isha kshera. I'm a good wife. I want to do my husband. Really, I didn't want to sell the field. So here also she can say, I really didn't want to say Dinu Dvarim, I only did it because it made my husband happy. Amar Bzeira, Amar Rav Chisda lo kasha. We don't have a question. Harab Meir, Harab Yehuda. Right? The Mishnah and Gittin and our Mishnah reflect 2 different opinions of Tanoim. Our Mishnah reflects the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And Gittin and Rabbi Yehuda, the Sanya, we learn a Brayso, Kasa Rishon lo Chaspalo. If a husband sells a property, Nichse Malog, to a first person, and the wife does not sign the Shtar Mecher, the deed, the Sheni V'Chaspalo, then he sells another property to a second person, and she signs on the deal. She signs on the deed. Ibda Kesubasa. She lost her Kesuba, Divrei Meir. Meaning, she loses her rights to collect from both of these fields. Normally a wife can collect from the property of her husband. She loses the right to collect from these fields because the fact, Rameir says, normally a woman can say, but then why didn't you sign on the first field? You only signed on the second field. Second field, you can say, however, the first one you didn't sign on shows that you're not interested in saying, you're not someone, you're not Isha Ksheri, you're not a woman who does the ratzon of her husband. If you don't marry Yachol Ish Domer Nachas Rabbi Yehuda says she always has the claim. She can say, maybe the first one she wasn't aware what was going on. The second one she can say, I did it on account of my husband. For both fields, she has the ability to say that. Atem malachem alai. What do you have a dealing with? Meaning, basically, she collect from these buyers. Rebbe sasam lahacha remeir, v'sasam lahasam k'Rebbe Yehuda. Here, he wrote anonymously our Mishnah according to the opinion of Rebbe Meir. And there in Gittin, which is also an anonymous Mishnah, that follows the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa gives them resolution to the question. But Gerusha, v'divrei hakol. Our Mishnah is talking about a woman who's divorced already. So the whole concept is she can say nachas ruach asisi l'bayli. If you're divorced, right, and you want to collect the ksuba, until now we're talking about where the husband died and she's collecting the ksuba. If they get divorced, she also collects the ksuba. If she gets divorced, she's not going to say nachas ruach asisi l'bayli. She said dinu dvarim after the gerushin. She has no husband. She's not doing it for her husband. So her statement was real. Rav Ashi Amar Kula Rebbe Meiri. Rashi says no. Both the Mishnah here and the Brayis and the Mishnah and Gittin reflect the opinion of Rebbe Meir. The Adkan L'Kar Meir Hasam El B'Shnei L'Kukos. Rebbe Meir only said what he said over there in that Brayisa when he sold 2 fields. The Amrila Yisa Denachas Rocha Avat L'Kama Ibai Lechem Evet. L'Kama Ibai Lechem Evet. If you're doing Nachas Rocha for your husband, so you should have done it also for the first sale. Why didn't you sign on the first sale? Aval B'Lokeach Echad. Here, our Mishnah is similar to one buyer. He only sold the field to one person. Afilu Rebbe Meir Moda, even Rebbe Meir Moda, that you can say Nachas Ruach Asisi L'Bayli. Sorry, you can't. Right. Here also you can say Nachas Ruach Asisi L'Bayli. So therefore, the question comes back. So why in our Mishnah can she say that? Why does she lose her rights when she relinquishes her rights for the first one? And the cost of Leila Achar. Our Mishnah is talking about precisely the case of the Brisa that we quoted before, where the husband wrote 2 properties. She signed off on the second one, but not on the first one, so therefore she loses her right to say Nachas Ruach Asisi L'Bayli. Masisa Tana and Hasam. We learned over there in Mizachas Gittin. Any from Nachasim Mishubadim Makom Sheish Nachasim B'nei Chorin. We're going to discuss this in more with Ben Tzion. The Mishnah in Gittin says, if someone owes me money, right? So I have a lien on his property, right? So he sold some of his property, but he has other property which he didn't sell. So I can't collect from the buyer, from the property, the lien on it, as long as this person who owes me money still has fields I collect. I feel Anzi Boris, even if the fields that he sold to the other person was superior fields, they were Idis or Bainonist, and they're inferior fields that he has, I have to collect from Bnei Chorin first. Iboilu. So based on that Mishnah and Gittin, the Gemara has the following question over here. Ishtadov Bnei Chori Mahu Delitcher of Mishabli, right? When he sold the property, he left fields. However, after he left the field that are Bnei Chorin, that are free fields, that don't have a lien on them, right? Hurricane Ian came and he ruined the fields. Can you go and collect from the Shubadim? Technically, the Bnei Chorin are still around, but they're not worth anything because they're ruined. Tashma. So let's bring a proof to this question from our Mishnah. Actually, this is the Brisa. He wrote, he sold the property to the first person, and the wife didn't sign it. He sold the property to the second person, and she did sign it. Kesubos. And then Meir says she loses the right to say Nachas Ruach Asisi L'Bayli. If you hold that the correct answer to that question is that if an onus happened, unforeseen circumstance happened, and the Bnei Chorin, the free fields, were ruined, you can collect from the Shubadim. Right? The fact that she signed off on the Ksuba to the second one, she should still be able to collect from the first one. Right? It's like that. An unfortunate thing happened. She signed off on the second property. The first one, though, she didn't sign off on, so she didn't agree to it. So therefore, it's like the case, an unfortunate occurrence happens to the one field, you can collect from the other field, which is collecting Mishubadim, because the husband sold it to somebody else. Amr Nachman Yitzchak, my Ivda Misheni. Nachman Yitzchak says, you're right, it's true. She lost the ability to collect from the second field, but she could collect from the first field. Same thing over here. If the Bnei Chorin got ruined by rain, or they got ruined by whatever natural causes, you could collect from the Shubadim. Rava retorts, no. Shtei Tshuvos B'Dovar. 2 proofs not like you. Ibda sounds like she lost the entire right to collect, not both from the second and from the first. Ro Tanya, with a different price. I love him in a echad o machar nechasav l'shnayim. Kasav balcha v'lokeach sheni din dvarim eli imcha. Ein lo al lokeach rishon klum. V'imnei sheyachal omar lo hinachni l'cham makom l'gavos timenu. A man lends to a person, and like similar to our case, he sells his properties to two people. So he has lien on two properties. And then the creditor writes to the second buyer, I've relinquished my rights to collect from you. So he can't go back to the first buyer and say, I'm taking the land from you, because the first one can say, no, I bought it first. I left free land. The second one bought the rest of the free land. Right? So the same thing over here. Right? You can't say just because the first one is gone, right? So I can collect from the Mishubad and the second one that was sold. So the Gemara differentiates. The Gemara says, no, Hasam iu the afsid nafshe biyadayim. Right? Maybe really, technically, if someone sells property to somebody and Mishubadim and the Bnei Chorin become washed away, they become ruined, I could collect from the Mishubadim. Here it's different because you yourself wrote Dinu Dvarim. You relinquish rights to one of the fields, so you can't say, oh, in fact, I relinquished the rights. It was like an unforeseen circumstance. No, it's not an unforeseen circumstance. You relinquished your rights. It was your fault. So therefore, you can't go back and say, no, I can collect now from the Mishubadim. I'm going to read Rav Ashi. Rav said to Rav Ashi, the top of Sadi Hamad Beis, Hamais Michal Yom. It happens every day that you allow a person to collect from the Shubad. And Hu Gabra, what's an instance where this happened? Hu Gabra, the Mishkan Le Pardes Lachavre, Lezer Shnin. Someone lent money to his friend, and the guy gave him a mashkon. He gave him a collateral to collect from. What was the collateral? He gave him a field which had grapevines in it, 10 years. So basically, he has 10 years to pay back the loan. And 10 years worth of eating grapes is commensurate to the amount of the loan. It's the same amount as the loan. However, it was a bad field. After 5 years, it dried up the vineyard. Now he had 5 years left of eating. The Rabbanan wrote a shtar that he can collect from 5 years worth of Mishubadim, of this guy's property. If he sold anything after the loan started, he can collect properly. Hasam Nami, Inu the Afsidu and Afshayu. Gemara says, no, there also is different. Right? They're also, right, people know that a vineyard might not last 10 years, so therefore when they bought from this guy who gave out the loan, they knew it might dry up. And therefore, we allow them to collect. Maybe really, when an onus happened, maybe you can't collect. The halacha follows, nonetheless, the halacha is, if an onus happens, you could collect from the Mishubadim. We'll explain more of this halacha, and even with Ben Sion, the word lean, what does it mean? It's not spelled L-E-A-N. So you don't normally spell L-I-E-N. Is there any relationship between lean and lean? We'll discuss more the difference between Bnei Chorin and Mishubadim in English Ben Sion. Amar Abaye, Nichsai lich ve'achrayach leponi. Abaye says, if a person, before he gets married, we'll see, he writes to a woman, his woman friend, his girlfriend, my property is to you, and after you die, it should go to somebody else, so whoever that specified somebody else is, your son, your friend, your father. V'amda says, then he got married to her. Baal lokeach heavy. Baal, like we learned, he's considered a buyer. And therefore, once she dies, the person he wrote acharayach goes to afterwards. He has the first lien on it. The husband, right? They're Masaka and Usha. The husband is lokeach heavy. Therefore, he has a lien on the property. He preempts the acharayach from collecting. Kiman, who is this statement of Abaye like? If a person would say this, right, the statement, Yard Arishon Machar Hasheni Machar, the first person goes, right? He gave the property to the first person. The first person sold the property. Hasheni Mosim Yad Alakuchos. Right? The second person, the acharayach, can take the Adal Kuk. Once he dies, can take on the Kuk. It's different Rebbe. Shinglil Omer, Ein L'Sheni L'Mashishi Arishon. Shinglil says the Sheni loses out over here. Only whatever the property the first person has that he didn't sell. If he sold it, he no longer has entitlement to it. So Abaye says like Shinglil Gamliel, once he marries the woman, he becomes the lokeach, and therefore it preempts the second person collecting. Did Abaye really say this? Amar Abaye, Ezu Russia Arum was considered a devious Russia. Right. Pascal Rosh Gamliel, he says Rosh Gamliel's it's pretty devious. So Rosh Gamliel said basically, right? Someone makes a promise, I'm going to give it to you, and after you die, give it to somebody else. Rosh Gamliel says you can preempt that other person from getting it by acquiring the field. So the Gemara says, Mi Kamar Tinase, it doesn't say that he should get married. Or Nises Kamar, all Abaye was saying, if he happens to get married, it's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to be like Rosh Gamliel, but the halacha does follow Rosh Gamliel b'di'evid. Amar Abaye, Nichsi lech v'achrach l'poni. Abaye also said, if you make a statement, I'm giving you my property, and after you die, someone else will get it. Umachra, and she sold it, umesa, and then she died. Abal motz miyad l'kuchos. And the husband can take out from the kuchos. I mentioned before, v'acharayech miyad bal. However, Abaye adds over here that after the husband takes out the kuchos, the acharayech, right, the person who was supposed to get it after she died, he or she could take it out from the hands of the husband. But lokeach miyad acharayech. Then once the husband collects, then the buyer could take it out of the acharayech. Mokminon lekulu biyad lokeach. At the end of the day, the Beis Din paskins, the lokeach, the last one, gets to keep it. Ma'ishna ma'adis nan, the chosros chalila. What is this different? Now, the difference between this statement of Abaye and the previous statement of Abaye is this time the husband was married to her when he made the statement acharayach l'ploni. So therefore, he sort of relinquished his rights to collect from the acharayach, right? So all the Baal can collect from the lakuchos, but he can't collect from the acharayach. That's why the acharayach takes out of the Baal. So the Gemara says, even the second statement has a problem for our Mishnah. It says, right, where each one has a right to take from the other person, and it goes in circles, right? We say, make a deal, make a compromise. So we don't say make a deal. We say that the last person keeps it, lokeach keeps it. The Gemara answers, Hasam islub seida lakuluhu. In our Mishnah, right, you have one man with two women who had Kesubos. Each one was owed a Kesuba. So each one, and then he sold the property to a third person. So each person, the buyer, and the two Kesubos, each one is losing out. So you have to make a pshara. Here, the only one losing out is the person who bought the field, because, right, the husband just married the woman. He's not losing anything. It was the woman's field. And also the husband's statement that if you go after the ploni, that's a matana to him. So therefore, the only person really standing to lose out, right, lose their money. Now we're not talking about not getting a positive gain, but losing their money is a lokeach, so therefore we give it to him. As a Rafram, Amar l'shmais Gemara Rav Ashi. Rafram came and said the aforementioned halacha in front of Rav Ashi. Amar Abaye, Did Abaye really say this? Amar Abaye, Nichsai lich l'achrayach l'ploni. Amar v'nizis baal lokeach heavy. And l'achrayach makom baal klon. Like I said before, the two statements of Abaye seem to contradict each other. Amar lehasim da amar lak shi pnuya. The first case is when he said it while they weren't married. Hakad amar lak shi nesua. Second case is when he said it when they were married. My kamala achrecha liknik baal lo likni. So basically, by saying it while they were married, basically he was willing to forgo his rights to kanasusha, and therefore the other person, his wife, he was giving it to, and the person after to inherit from his wife, he said they should be kona, and the husband should not be kona. He was relinquishing his right. The chein balchov. Then the Mishnah says the same thing about balchov. And also by a balchov isha. What are these two cases? Tana, the Bride says v'chein balchov v'shnei lakuchos, v'chein isha balchov v'shnei lakuchos. The same halacha in our Mishnah applies to a regular loan when someone loaned money to somebody else, right? And then the person who owed the creditor money sold two of his fields. He owed him $100, and he sold two fields, each for $50 each. So, and then one of them said, "Dinu dvarim ein li alecha." I'm not going to collect from you. I'm not going to collect from one of the buyers. So the other one collects 50, but then, right, chosros chalila. Once he collects from the second one, so let's say it's Reuven and Shimon. So Reuven was willing to forgo his rights from the first buyer, but not from the second buyer. So Shimon collects the land, but then Reuven collects from Shimon, and then the person who he waived the rights to collect from, the buyer collects from, the first buyer collects from Reuven, so then closes Chalila. And the same thing by Isha's Bala Skov, a woman who she has collecting her ksuba from a husband, and the husband owed her $100 for a ksuba. She was an almana, and the husband had two properties, sold $50. The same thing would apply, like in the aforementioned case, the Balchov, right, where she waives the right to collect from one, but not the other, and therefore it closes Khalila like the Mishnah, and therefore they have to do a pshara to resolve the matter. That's the conclusion of today's shir. We have finished Hajan Allah Misha Yanasa. You'll begin Almana Nizonis Minasa Yisomim. Not tomorrow, because tomorrow is Sukkot. Hopefully on Tuesday, maybe Monday night, maybe Motzei Sukkot. We'll get into it. If you're in America, you got 2 days, so you're not about to hear it until Tuesday anyway, Tuesday night. I hope you enjoyed today's shir. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion. We discuss Halakha L'Maisa over here. Hilchasa, the Gemara Pasuk, Nishtadov B'nei Chari Tarfim Mishabi. You can collect from the Meshubadim, even though normally you have to collect from B'nei Chorin first, and not from Meshubadim. If Hurricane Ian ruined your B'nei Chorin, you can collect from the Meshubadim. Why don't we say it's an onus happened and you can't collect that anymore, right? Ishtad, like the Gemara says in the beginning of Mesechus Kesubos, here in the Stach Fasadeyu, an onus happened. It was your field. You're supposed to collect from B'nei Chorin. An onus happened. It's your fault. Well, I'll explain the concept of a lien, L-I-E-N, Ian Ben Sion, coming up next.